sign it into law. As we gather here in Reno, I want to thank our many distinguished guests, including two fine cabinet members, Agriculture Secretary Ed Schaefer, and of course Interior Secretary Confernce. It's a pleasure, as always, to see the Governor of Nevada, Jim Gibbons, who's an old friend. And I also want to thank Bob Modell, Chairman of the Sporting Conservation Council, a Wyoming boy. Bob and I shared a dam in the Bighorn River together some years ago in Montana. And Steve Maley here as well used to be the forest supervisor on the Shoshone National Forest in Wyoming. When I was the congressman from Wyoming and a senior member of the Public Land Subcommittee, Steve and I had occasion to take many official trips to the backcountry in Wyoming during those days. It's great to see all of you in attendance today because this is an extraordinarily important conference. The idea for a conference on wildlife policy originated last year with an executive order. President Bush directed the chairman of the Council on Environmental Quality, Jim Connaughton, who's with us today, to work with the White House and the departments to convene this meeting. I want to thank everyone who worked so hard to make it successful. As all of you know very well, President Bush made wildlife conservation an early and a high priority in his administration. We've carried out that commitment in these 8 years, and we've been proud to have people like you as partners in the enterprise. The men and women in this room understand what conservation is all about. It means reverence toward creation and a commitment to faithful stewardship. It means guarding our spectacular wildlife populations, not just for our own time, but for all time. Conservation also means passing on a way of life to the next generation, a tradition of sportsmanship, cooperation, and respect for the natural world. This ethic was embodied in the life and the work of Theodore Roosevelt. As an avid outdoorsman, Roosevelt saw firsthand the ignorance and excess that were destroying America's wildlife, scarring the land, and putting natural resources in danger. He wasn't the sort to stand by and let that continue. So he brought together the nation's governors for a historic meeting on conservation. As a group, they declared the conservation of our natural resources is a subject of transcendent importance, which should engage the nation, the states, and the people in earnest cooperation. From the time of that conference, 100 years ago, until this very day, we've been a nation that takes conservation seriously. No other country on earth does a better job than the United States in respecting the environment and caring for the wonders of nature. One of the reasons for that leadership is the active concern and participation of the American sportsman. Sportsmen tend to be the best informed and most determined advocates for sensible wildlife and habitat conservation. Every year, people like you give thousands of hours of volunteer time to improve wildlife habitat and educate fellow citizens on the importance of conservation. Last year alone, sportsmen across the nation provided hundreds of millions of dollars for wildlife restoration. You don't just talk about the issues that matter, you back it up with money, with time, and with effort. You've proven that the people who are closest to the land are usually the ones who do the most for the land. Our whole nation benefits from the wisdom, the daily work, and the common sense of the American sportsman. We must never lose sight of a basic truth. When it comes to wildlife and natural resources, the sum total of wisdom and concern is not contained in the office buildings in Washington, D.C. As President Ronald Reagan once said, the American people have as much concern for the preservation of the beauty and the open space in their states as does the federal government. I just cannot believe that a little elite group in Washington has a conscience and that the people themselves do not. President Bush has spent 8 years encouraging the spirit of cooperative conservation, engaging the whole nation and making sure that voices like yours are heard in the corridors of power. The President has met regularly with sportsmen and leaders of hunting and conservation groups. He's listened carefully to what American hunters have to say. And I'm proud that many of your good ideas are now at the center of our conservation efforts. We set clear goals to improve habitat, to enlarge wildlife populations, and to increase opportunities for citizens of all ages to enjoy the great American outdoors. And together, we are meeting those goals. We're working together to protect wildlife and American sports. Forest. During our administration, the Forest Service was partnered with hunting groups to improve habitat for game species such as elk and deer. As a result, across broad stretches of federal landings, the animals now have better food and cover, which can lead to healthier populations. And in 2002, President Bush took one of the most significant and positive environmental steps in our lifetime when he announced the Healthy Forest Initiative. In an age of increasingly violent wildfires, the Healthy Forest Initiative was critical and long overdue. As the President said, the kindling on the ground, the decades of neglect, the decades of failed policy have meant that our forest fires are incredibly hot, incredibly catastrophic. Under Healthy Forest and the National Fire Plan, we have thinned and removed underbrush and carried out other landscape restoration across nearly 26 million acres. This too has made a tremendous difference in protecting animal habitat, food sources, and hunting grounds. With Healthy Forest, as with other policies, the theme was cooperation. We talked to everybody. We got excellent advice from the people who manage the forest and work in them and hunt them. And because we've acted sensibly and decisively, more of America's forests will be alive and healthy for generations to come. These have also been years of progress and improvement for America's wetlands. Wetlands and marshes are the nurseries of many types of wildlife, and up to half of all bird species on this continent nest or feed in our wetlands. These areas also provide great recreational opportunities for those of us who like to fish and hunt. 4 years ago, President Bush committed the nation to restoring, improving, and protecting at least 3 million acres of wetlands over a 5-year period. I'm pleased to report that we've met this goal, and we've done so 1 year ahead of schedule. Many of you have worked extremely hard to help revive these vital ecosystems and appreciate all you've done. In every way possible, we've tried to encourage and support the participation of sportsmen and landowners in our conservation efforts. We've expanded federal tax incentives to encourage private property owners to designate their property for conservation purposes. The response has been strong and positive. Through the Conservation Reserve Program, we are helping ranchers and farmers to restore grassland habitat. Since 2001, we've enrolled more than 1 million new acres in this program, and this has yielded important new nesting habitat. I heard President Bush himself talk about how rewarding it is to make your land hospitable for wildlife. Down at his ranch in Texas, they've cut underbrush, planted native grasses, and restored the land into wild prairie. Their grasses and wildflowers are now home to ground nesting birds, and after years of hard work, he and Laura now hear the call of the bobwhite quail on their property. I heard similar stories from other landowners. Taken together, they add up to an enormous benefit for our nation. It's worth remembering that the federal government owns or manages 1 of every 4 acres in America, and that means we need to work with the people who own the other 3/4. Let's get more wildlife habitat in the sensible way, by encouraging private owners to do the job themselves, not by starting up another federal land grab. When it comes to the use of federal lands, we have worked together to ensure reasonable access and responsible use by sportsmen, hunters, and conservationists. Since 2001, our administration has launched scores of new hunting and fishing programs on national wildlife refuges. We are working with 40 sportsman groups to further improve access to hunting and fishing on federal property. We're also making it easier for sportsmen to know where it is legal to hunt, by marking access points, improving highway signage for trailheads, and providing electronic maps online. These steps are also helping to raise and train sportsmen and conservationists for tomorrow. Our administration is encouraging young people to learn about the outdoors through federal programs like Kids in the Woods, which works to teach children about conservation and the role of responsible wildlife management. Private organizations, as always, are doing their part. Pheasants Forever has a program to solve what it calls America's nature deficit disorder. They've given the program a great name, No Child Left Indoors. Ducks Unlimited